Okay, we are live. Hello, everybody. Welcome back for another Indie Author Live Chat. Today, I am here with A.E. Kincaid. Hello,
Hi.
A.E., or do you want me to call you Amy? Because I see you have Amy in parentheses.
Yes, perfect.
Okay.
Thank you so much for having me.
It is such a pleasure. I know we chatted a little bit behind the scenes before we got going on the live, and I am such a huge fan of your books. If you've never heard of Amy's books, The Demon, the Hero, and the City of Seven is the first book. And then the second book I actually have not read yet, and that's The Demon, the Hero, and the Secret of Stones, I think.
Yeah, Secret of the Stones. Yeah. It's not like you have nothing going on. Yourself.
No, this is really, I mean, the books are beautiful. And that's actually how I found you, is I found your cover through somebody else who had posted a picture of your cover. So yes, people share your covers of your books on Instagram because that's how we find books.
That's that's right. I know we say don't judge a book by its cover, but I judge books by their covers. I shout out to my cover artist, Sarah Oliver. She's in Australia, but she is great and lovely person.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. It actually brought a question up of, is this a young adult because of the cover?
Yes, I have gotten that question a few times actually, and it really would depend. I would consider it more new adult. The main character is a snarky demon, and he swears a lot. So in my mind, that he's 550 years old. The other main character is an inept human hero named Reg, and he is 22 years old. So it's a little bit past YA into new adult. However, I think it really depends on what your overall tolerance for swearing would be.
I love that new adult is a category because there was just this gap for those who are watching and maybe you've been reading for a little while. There's no shame in reading young adult whatsoever.
Right.
But young adults can go as young as 12 or 13 and all the way up to 18. And then there would be like this jump from almost a sort of sheltered ish YA into boom, full steam, full cursing, full violence and gore in adult. And so that new adult is for like ages 18 to 23, I think, and that bridges that.
That's right. Yeah. So I have like a comparison in the beginning of the book to give you an idea of like how old should Mal be acting for real? Because he's 550 years old, but he says he's not acting that. He's acting more. He says like he's about 30 in human years, but it's like this conversation that they have so that I can kind of set the bar at what are your expectations for these people? Like what is acceptable and what's maybe not so acceptable for them. So that's about, I consider it NA, but
Well, if we can accept sparkling vampires as teenagers, even though they're hundreds of years old, so we're okay accepting one for their 30s, right?
That's right.
We love snarky demons that swear.
Yes, they do.
Hey, Paula, I love your icon, Paula.
That is awesome.
Yes, and we are doing this live. So if you're watching live and you have questions at any point, drop them in the chat. If you're watching on Twitter, you can't drop a comment on Twitter, but you can hop over to YouTube and drop us one there. And if you're watching the replay and you have questions afterward, feel free to leave them in the comments and I'll send them over to Amy later on. Yeah. So with that being said, Amy, we sort of skipped over a little bit because we got so excited about your book cover. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what kind of books you write?
Sure. So I'm Amy, A.E. Kincaid, and I write at the moment, I write humorous fantasy adventure stories. Age group would be new adults, to adults for the most part, in the way I consider those things. And I've written 2 books and a novelette in this series so far, and there's plans for more books. This particular set will be a 3-book arc for Mal and Reg, but there are some other characters, some other situations that can take me a little bit further into the Widdershins universe. I am looking to be a fantasy author overall. I do have some plans for some middle grade work. I have a young son. He's 5 right now. So I do want to write things that he would be able to read, right? He knows the stories, actually. He knows the current stories. He knows about Malin Ridge. I have told him some maybe PG versions of them.
That's okay. It'll just be more for him to discover when he gets older, right?
That's right.
So how does he feel about his mom being a writer?
Oh yeah, he doesn't really care at all. Because part of it is my husband is a college marching band director. So you go to a football game and the band is there and he gets to hang out with the band and they're on the field and he gets to hang out with the twirler. And I mean, it's a production and it is very, very cool and very impressive to a 5-year-old. I think he is proud of me because I did a thing I wanted to do. I don't think he really understands maybe all the things that goes into putting a book out there in the universe, which is fine.
But I'm guessing it makes it easier to stay in love with that younger fantasy too, because I'm imagining a lot of us writers, we read a lot too. So
exactly. Yeah. And it is. And I sometimes read books, like I'll read a middle grade book and then I will tell him the story orally. Because he loves stories. We read a ton. I'm sure you're so surprised. But sometimes he likes to read the book. Like we're really into all the Dave Pilkey Captain Underpants stuff right now.
Oh yeah.
He just likes to hear a story. So we do a lot of audiobooks and just telling each other stories and things.
Well, that's wonderful. So it's like a family affair.
That's right. Yeah.
Oh, so how did you get into sort of the writing and publishing? Because I know we were talking earlier about how most of us indie authors, we have day jobs. How did you sort of get into this?
Yeah, so I do also have a day job, and I am very lucky. So I went to school for music. I became a music teacher. I found out that wasn't really for me, and then I took a really long time to, number one, accept that that was the case, and then also make a transition to the place I wanted to be. So I'm really lucky that I also write in my day job primarily. I just, more for like marketing purposes.
Yeah, less fantasy.
Yeah, it's copywriting more than fantasy. So it is a different part of my brain. But so I got into writing. I've always written. I'm sure everyone you interview has said, I've been writing since I was in 4th grade, whatever. Me too. And I always thought that I would publish a book. And somehow I was a couple things happened. One, my critique partner is JL Vampa, who has a book that came out.
Oh, I love JL. She's amazing.
It's just the best. And Autumn of the Grimoire came out today. So if you're into, new adult fantasy, it's a good one. I was very privileged to read it early and I loved it. Anyway, she is my critique partner and we just started trading words every single week. We thought that was it. If it was 200 words, it was 200 words. It was 3,000 words, it was 3,000 words. But every single Wednesday, we committed to having something for the other person. And it turned into a book. It turned into 2 books, right? Because she has one too. So once I kind of got in the groove and I realized this is a thing that I can really get done. Then I looked at the calendar and I was like, oh, I'm turning 40 in January. I wonder if this could come out before that. So that's, that was part of the timeline for book 1.
Wow. Oh, it's so cool how it's such a small world.
Yes. No, she's
and how having the writing partner to pull you up. That's great advice. I actually haven't heard that a lot. I think maybe one of the questions that authors have before they do something like that is, how do you find somebody you trust?
Yeah. And that is really tough, because that's really scary, right? You're putting all your ideas onto paper and you're sending them to someone else. And not only could that hurt you emotionally, but it could hurt you professionally as well. Like if they're not a cool person, they could adopt some of those things for their own projects, you know? So it is really scary. But I have actually known JL since just after she published The Queen's Keeper, which I think is like 2017 or 18, somewhere in there. So we've known each other for a long time. And she has always been so supportive of like I wrote like one like a micro fiction contest one.
Yeah.
She's like my biggest champion. And so I knew I could trust her. And she's just a wonderful person.
Oh, that's very sweet. And if you're watching and you don't know who JL Vampa is and you'd like to see more, I dropped a link in the chat to a live chat I did with her earlier this year. And now it's just like, man, where has time gone? But on your books, though, Paula wants to know, do we get more Saffron and Goodfellow novelettes?
Oh, yeah. So at first I was thinking no, but as I was writing book 3, I think I've got an idea. So yeah, I think we'll get at least one more from them.
Yay!
I like them. They're not like the standout favorites, like when people talk about their favorite characters from the series, but I think people do like them. I get like a few comments here and there that they're like cool, you know, geeky magic people. So it's fun.
Have there been other characters like that have surprised you from like reader responses that are popular?
Yeah. So I'm not. I don't know if this is exactly a surprise, but there is a character in the second book, Chaz, and Chaz he's kind of inching up on Gran. Gran was like the one, and now people are like, oh, maybe Chaz though. I like Chaz. So I don't want to spoil exactly who Chaz is for those of you who haven't read the second book yet, but he's a good one. He's fun. And he's fun to write.
Oh my God.
She likes Chaz. Yeah.
Are your novelettes available on Amazon, or how do we find them?
Yeah, so I right now and up through this next newsletter, it's been exclusively for my newsletter people. However, I will be transitioning it to Amazon for as low a price as I can possibly post something to Amazon, because I don't want it to be like a huge haul to read this novelette. But it is a great it's like a nice bridge between book 1 and book 2. Doesn't deal with Mal and Reg, deals with a different set of characters, but it also introduces another potential spin-off. It's got some cool things that they find out there, and that would be neat to write as well. So it could be part of the universe, bigger universe.
Yeah, you want to go, if you want to grab one earlier, you want to go sign up for Amy's newsletter. Mm-hmm. And all of Amy's links should be in the description box if you're watching on YouTube. But you can also find Amy on Instagram, stick her name in Google, and it should come up. So if you're looking for her website.
Yep. Yeah, it's aekincaid.com. But also, if you put me in Google, it's either me or like a medical professional. I'm not the medical professional.
The medical professional is stealing all your fan mail. You're like, who's Chaz? What's going on?
Yeah, I'm
so
not.
How did you decide to use the pen name that you're using?
Yeah, so I don't make any secret about the fact that this is my pen name. My real name is Amy Mertz. In fact, I'm working on some nonfiction that'll be in Amy Mertz. I am a big fantasy reader. I always have been. And when I was thinking about the genre in general, and I was thinking about seeing my name on the cover of a book, and I just thought, if you're like in Barnes & Noble or whatever, and you pick up a book and you think, wow, would Amy Mertz know something about fantasy? I don't know. It just like didn't ring fantasy for me. So I needed to find something else. And Kincaid is the last name of 2 characters in one of my favorite books from my childhood called From the Mixed-Up Files of Mrs. Basil E. Frankweiler by E.L. Teufelberg. And Jamie and Claudia Kincaid are the brother and sister who are the main characters in that book. And I adore Claudia. I always have. And I thought, that's a good one. Good homage kind of name.
Wow. Oh, I love that so much. So we can say somebody else's book has inspired your pen name, which is going to be on your books.
That's right.
Yeah, I've seen several questions, and I think I've addressed these on several other videos. But I'd love to hear your take. And one is that does a woman's name automatically mean you're going to sell less books? And is that why you go with a initial pen name?
Right. So I have heard that a lot. I don't know if it's as true now as it was. I
Mm.
think when I started thinking in my 20s about writing a book, not only was a woman writing fantasy not very popular, aside from like Ursula Le Guin, Madeline L'Engle, those types of like really big names. In addition to that, female main characters, particularly if you wrote YA or middle grade fiction, um, they were like, boys won't read characters, female characters, so don't even bother writing that. So there have been some changes, I think, over time. I could have done Amy Kincaid. The second, the E in my name is sort of an homage as well. Both one of my grandmothers and one of my husband's grandmothers' names were both Eleanor, and so it's sort of like a little bit in there. It's not really because I was afraid to be me.
Yeah. I think today, in the age of social media, somebody pointed out on one of my other interviews recently, people can find who you are so easily
It's true.
that it's almost like, except for that bookstore shelf or a library shelf, most people aren't going to know. And a lot of people, thankfully, don't seem to necessarily care from a reader side like they used to.
Yeah, yeah. I think we've proven our mettle. So
There are some very strong writers. And of course, I know a lot of female writers paved the way.
yeah,
The Anne Rices of the world, and even modern day for indie, it's like Elise Kova and what she's done for the genre and for female indie authors.
that's right. Yeah.
So why indie? This is another one we get a lot. Um, so we know JL, who we mentioned earlier, she's releasing today one that she has gone with a more traditional style publishing, but she's self-published.
Yep.
Has her journey influenced you in any way to maybe want to go hybrid?
So, so maybe the thing that makes me want to go hybrid more than anything is that there are parts of the publishing process that drive me insane, and they happen to also be parts that, if I were to go with a publisher, there are things that the publisher would do. So, so that is really a strong pull in that direction. But indie, I went indie for a couple of reasons. One, because I was more interested in publishing the book than I was waiting for someone to tell me it was publishable.
Mm.
The thing in indie is that so for traditional publishing, you spend more of your time and less of your money. In indie, you spend more of your money and less of your time, right? Because I can publish as fast as I can get them out. I can do that if I want to. And that appealed to me as well. Sasha Black and Helen Schurer are two of my indie like giants who I look to, and they've both been very successful indie, and I admire them so much, and they have given me a lot of guidance, and particularly Sasha. And so I didn't feel afraid by going indie. Um, so there is that's kind of the reason why I went indie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, I write new adult, which a lot of traditional publishing doesn't consider a genre. New adult humorous fantasy adventure books. It's kind of niche,
Right.
and I was thinking that an agent would look at it and say, I mean, fun, but no.
Or ask for a bunch of changes. Like, okay, well, let's bring this more into true epic fantasy or portal adventure fantasy. Yeah.
Exactly. And I was literally thinking, I just want something, I want beach read fantasy, or a friend of mine, Amy, says fantasy. I want something short that you can bring to the beach. You're not going to be crying about it. Just really light and easy.
Well, I think really what stuck out to me when I started reading the first book was sort of the comedy in the narration that makes me think back to classics. Like the first time I remember reading Dragonheart, the books, not the movie. And it's got that serious things here and there, and it's an adventure, but it's also got that comedy. And it seems like that would be so hard to marry together in a book. Has that been hard for you?
So I think if I had done it on purpose, it would have been more difficult. But I actually started the book. Um, I have a story. It's the story of how Mal and Reg met. It's in the Rebel Diaries anthology, edited by Sasha Black. And so the whole entire story, everything came from the prompt for the call for submissions,
Oh,
which
wow.
was essentially like, what happens if like the bad guy is the main character of the story? Creative, swearing, and courage. There was more to it than that, but those are the two things that that stood out to me. And I just had this vision one day of like of Mal and Reg, like in just I saw them together, and I thought that they would be absolutely horrible together, and that would be funny. So it kind of happened on its own, and the more I write them, the easier it is to write them.
So they're telling you, here's how you're going to write this story.
Yeah, for the most part.
Are you a planner or a pantser?
Before I wrote these books, I would have told you 100% a planner. It turns out a little bit of both, but I do like to have a working outline. Not super detailed, but I like to know some of the main points that I'm trying to hit.
Yes. Luna says, sounds like a cool concept.
I hope so. I like it. You know? And at the end of the day, I always say to people, you know, not every book is for every person, but there is a person for every book. Not
Right.
everybody has to love your stuff. My family, actually, they think my books are funny, but they do not like the swearing. They don't like it at all. And so it's not for everybody. I didn't write it for them. I wrote it for Sasha's book, her anthology, you know. So, but I'm so glad that they are still reading it, and you know that they think it's funny and things like that. But it's not something they would pick up, and that's okay.
I think that's a really great point because I've seen questions come up in the past and it can be a difficult one to answer, which is, does your family, things like, do your family and friends support you and blah, blah, blah. But, you know, there can be a difference between support and enjoying it for themselves as casual readers.
Yes.
I just love the attitude you have about it.
Is hugely supportive of me, even if it's not the kind of thing that they would definitely want to read themselves.
Oh, goodness. Yeah. And I think it's hard too sometimes for people who are on the inner circle. I don't know if you've experienced this, but it's like, oh, that's what's in her head.
Yes, exactly. And you know, and that's I think what a lot of my family thinks. They're like, "Oh, little Amy." Like I was one of the younger kids in the family. Like, "Oh, little Amy, like she has stuff in her head." And I remember the first time I thought somebody said that to me, and I was like, "What would you have said if I wrote a murder mystery?" Like, wouldn't that be worse?
I'm a horror writer now.
No, but it's fine. And it is hard for me. I'm an Enneagram 9. I want everyone to be happy, but I also am wing 1, so I know not everybody's gonna be happy.
Yeah. I love the reactions in the comments.
Yep, I feel that.
Yes. So if you're a reader and you're like, I want to write and put your stuff out there, yeah, just be prepared.
Yeah.
Where did you come up with that idea? I don't know. I had a random drink. Really?
I'll just brush my teeth one day, you know, whatever.
Are you working on any other series?
Yeah, so I also I am working little by little. This one is not taking center stage at the moment because I have committed to finishing a series. I would like to do that. But I have like a middle grade magical realism series that I'm working on. And then also I have a sketch of, I don't know if it's going to be more of like a Nate the Great level or if it's going to be more middle grade, sort of specifically for my son, about a magical detective agency that he is the head of. We had a weird situation. I don't know if you were following Pit Watch at all. Over the summer, we had a pit show up in our neighbor's, not show up in our neighbor's driveway. It was on purpose. They were going to pave the end of the driveway.
Okay.
But it got out of control. Like the whole project got out of control, and there was this like mystery hole in the ground, like tunnel underneath the ground, and it brought up all these thoughts, and between that and just some comments that some people have made in the past, I thought this could make a book or a series, So we'll see.
Yeah. Inspiration strikes from the most surreal places.
It's true.
Like in the acknowledgments, to the neighbor with the hole in your driveway. This one's for you.
I know. It's this whole story is ridiculous. I won't go into it, but essentially there was about 3 feet of driveway that needed to be paved, and then they ended up opening like a 12-foot pit in our front yards. So they should.
You're just waiting for like the demons to come up out of the portal or something.
Exactly true. Yep. I kept saying, I was like, is it Moria down there? Like
Alice in Wonderland. Paula says, no Balrogs.
No bummer.
Too greedily and too deep. Goodness. So how do you find time to work a day job and write too? Do you have any advice you give other people who are getting into this?
Yeah, so I sort of do. For the first 2 books, essentially I worked, then I hung out with my family, and then I put my son to bed, and then I wrote for like 45 minutes to an hour after that, and then I went to bed. I'm not a person who can go without sleep. I'm just not. So that was my time. I knew it was my time. And once I got into the schedule of doing it, I just did it. Finishing the book was enough motivation to fit that in. However, I will tell you that a year of that and publishing 2 books, I cannot keep that up. It's too much, especially considering now that I have 2 books out there. I also have to market those 2 books. So between all the things that go into already having books and trying to finish new books, I'm not entirely sure how the schedule is going to go. I think I'm just going to kind of set a word count for myself each week and trying to hit that word count and do it over lunch or whatever. Sometime I'm awake would be the best. Doing it when you're awake is the best, but finding a schedule and sticking to it. If you can find a person who, even if all they do is read what you write and they give you no comments, but you have to give them words on a Monday or a Wednesday or whatever it is, that helped me so much, the most of anything.
Dedicated time, even if it's a short amount of time.
Exactly.
Yeah. Consistency will build a book. You only need 50,000-ish words. So for a full novel, and if you write 1,000 a day,
it's so true. And that's a nice way for my brain to imagine things. I'm like, oh, if I get 10,000 words done this week, like I only have like 6 weeks to go,
Yeah. It's a marathon.
That's right.
It really is. It's a marathon. You get to the end of one book and you pass the baton on to the next book. And yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so, so much for joining us today, Amy. And thank you, Paula and Luna and everybody else who's watching live. This has been so much fun.
Yes, thank you so much. I had a great time. We should do this again sometime when you're not moving and doing 100,000 things.
Yes. So if you haven't read The Demon, the Hero, and the City of Seven, you can get that on Amazon. And book 2 is also on Amazon, or you can go sign up for free on Amy's newsletter to get the novelettes that we were talking about. Thank you for talking with us. This is such an honor. And if you're watching the replay, seriously, if you have questions, don't hesitate to drop them in the comments and we'll make sure that Amy gets them. But thank you so much. Paula says, let's do this again.
We should.
We'll have to see how the series is going next year.
Yes, right. I'm hoping to have it out sometime next year. I am.
Yay. Something to look forward to for 2023. All right. Well, thank you so much, Amy. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
You too. Thank you so much for having me.
Bye-bye.